The cosmic gift. Sarah Chen had always found more comfort in the stars than in people. As the lead researcher at the Mountain View Observatory, her nights were spent scanning the cosmos for signs of intelligent life, while her days were filled with analyzing data that most would find incomprehensible. She hadn't planned on changing her routine that fateful night, but the universe had other plans. The anomaly appeared on her instruments at exactly 2:37 a.m. At first, she thought it was an equipment malfunction, a sharp spike in electromagnetic radiation unlike anything she'd ever seen before. But as she adjusted her telescope's focus, something impossible appeared in her view field. A perfectly geometric object, roughly the size of a basketball, falling through Earth's atmosphere. Sarah's heart raced as she calculated its trajectory. The object would land less than a mile from the observatory, in the dense forest that surrounded the facility. Without hesitation, she grabbed her emergency kit and rushed out into the cool night air. Years of hiking these trails made navigation simple, even in the darkness, but nothing could have prepared her for what she found. The object had created a small crater, but showed no signs of damage. It was a dodecahedron, its 12 faces covered in swirling patterns that seemed to shift and change as she watched. The material was unlike anything she'd ever seen. Not quite metal, not quite crystal, but something in between. As she approached, it began to hum with a frequency that resonated through her bones. "Don't be afraid." The voice seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The air around the artifact began to shimmer, coalescing into a form that defied explanation. The being before her was humanoid, but clearly not human. Its skin appeared to be made of living starlight, and its eyes held the depth of galaxies. "I am Zora," the being said, its voice somehow both ancient and young. "I am what your kind might call a cosmic curator, though your language lacks the proper terms to truly describe my role. You have found my vessel, and by the laws of the universe, you are now entitled to 3 wishes." Sarah's scientific mind raced with questions, but her voice could only manage one. "Why me?" Zara's expression shifted in a way that might have been a smile. "The vessel finds those who are ready. You've spent your life looking up at the stars, seeking understanding. Now the stars have looked back, and I can wish for anything." Sarah asked, her mind already spinning with possibilities. "There are rules," Zara replied. "You cannot wish for more wishes. You cannot wish to alter the fundamental constants of the universe. You cannot wish to directly harm other beings. And most importantly, you must understand that every wish has consequences, ripples in the fabric of reality that cannot be undone." Sarah nodded slowly, her training as a scientist kicking in. "I need to think this through carefully. The implications of even a single wish could be enormous." "That wisdom is precisely why you were chosen," Zara said. "Many would rush to wish for wealth or power. You already understand that knowledge is the true currency of the universe." Sarah looked up at the stars, her constant companions for so long, and made her decision. "My first wish," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart, "is to understand. Not just the surface-level physics we've discovered, but the true nature of the universe. The mathematical poetry that makes reality possible." Zara's form brightened, and for a moment, Sarah thought she saw approval in those cosmic eyes. "Are you certain? True understanding comes with a price. Once you see the underlying structure of reality, you can never unsee it." "I'm certain," Sarah replied. "How can humanity take its place among the stars if we don't understand the true nature of space itself?" "Very well," Zara said, raising a hand that seemed to contain entire nebula. "Your first wish is granted. Prepare yourself." The universe exploded behind Sarah's eyes. Suddenly, she could see everything. The quantum foam that formed the foundation of reality, the hidden dimensions curled up in every point of space, the true nature of time as a dimension that flowed in more directions than humans had words for. She saw how gravity was merely a shadow of higher dimensional forces, how dark matter was the echo of parallel universes pressing against our own. When the initial overwhelming flood of information subsided, Sarah found herself on her knees, tears streaming down her face. The world looked different now. She could see the mathematical equations that governed every particle, every force, every moment. It was beautiful beyond words. "How do you feel?" Zara asked, though Sarah now understood that "feel" was an inadequate translation of the concept Zara was actually expressing. I understand now," Sarah whispered. "We've been looking at everything wrong. Our theories, our assumptions. We were like children trying to understand a computer by looking at its shadow." "And what will you do with this knowledge?" Zara asked. Sarah stood up slowly, her mind already racing with the implications. "I need to find a way to translate this understanding into something others can grasp. We're not ready for all of it, but there are pieces, elements that could help us advance, help us prepare." "Prepare for what?" Zara's question hung in the air like starlight. "For what's coming," Sarah replied, now able to see the patterns of probability stretching out before them. "Humanity isn't alone in the universe, and we're about to find that out the hard way. We need to be ready." Beyond understanding. Sarah spent the next week in a daze, her mind struggling to process the vast knowledge she'd received. The equations that governed reality now danced before her eyes constantly, making even simple tasks like driving feel surreal. She saw how each action created ripples in space-time, how probability clouds collapsed with every decision. Her colleagues at the observatory had noticed the change in her. How could they not? Her research papers were becoming increasingly revolutionary, though she was careful to present her discoveries in ways that could be verified by existing technology. She couldn't just reveal everything she now knew. The world wasn't ready for that kind of paradigm shift. "You haven't used your second wish," Zara observed one night, materializing in Sarah's office. The cosmic being had taken to appearing occasionally, curious about how Sarah was handling her new understanding. "Because I'm still trying to figure out the implications of the first one," Sarah replied, looking up from her computer, where she'd been working on a paper about quantum entanglement. "Do you know what's coming?" The threat I glimpsed. Zara's form shimmered like a distant galaxy. "I know many things, but the future exists in probability clouds, just as you now understand. What matters is how humanity chooses to face what's coming." Sarah stood and walked to her window, looking out at the stars she now saw in an entirely new way. "We're so primitive compared to what's out there. I've seen it in the equations. Civilizations that have evolved beyond physical form, beings that exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. And yet, Zora prompted. And yet there's something about humanity that's unique. I can see it in the mathematical patterns. We're young, yes, but our potential, it's different somehow. More chaotic, less predictable." "Now you begin to understand why you were chosen," Zara said. "Why the vessel revealed itself to you." Sarah turned back to face the cosmic being. "The second wish. I think I know what it needs to be. But I need to understand something first. These threats I see coming. They're not just random alien species looking to conquer, are they? There's something bigger happening. The universe is vast," Zara replied. "But it is not infinite. Resources, even at the cosmic scale, are limited. And there are forces that believe humanity's potential is too dangerous to be allowed to develop fully." Sarah nodded slowly. "Because we're unpredictable. Because we don't follow the normal evolutionary patterns. I can see it now. Most species develop in a relatively linear fashion, their technological and social evolution following predictable paths. But humans jump forward in unexpected leaps. You imagine possibilities that other species would never consider. You defy logical progression. It makes you dangerous in the eyes of some." Sarah's mind raced with the implications. The equation showed it clearly now. Humanity was like a wild card in the cosmic deck, a chaotic element that couldn't be easily predicted or controlled. And that made them a threat to powers that had spent billions of years carefully arranging the galaxy to their liking. "My second wish," Sarah said finally, her voice firm with conviction, "is to understand our enemies. Not just their technology or their plans, but their true nature, their weaknesses. Zara's form pulsed with what might have been approval. Are you certain? This knowledge will be difficult to bear. We need to know what we're up against, Sarah replied. And more importantly, we need to know how to survive it. Very well, Zara said, raising a hand that seemed to contain swirling nebulae. Your second wish is granted. The knowledge hit Sarah like a supernova. She saw them, the ancient ones, beings so old they had watched galaxies form and die. She saw their vast networks of engineered stars, their fleets of ships that could fold space itself, their calculations that had determined humanity was too unpredictable to be allowed to reach its full potential. But more importantly, she saw their fears. Their rigid adherence to logic and predictability had become their greatest weakness. They couldn't comprehend humanity's capacity for intuitive leaps, for finding solutions that defied conventional logic. They didn't understand human creativity, human emotion, human willingness to defy impossible odds. When the vision faded, Sarah found herself on the floor of her office, her whole body trembling. But her mind was clear, focused with newfound purpose. They're coming, she whispered, and we have less time than I thought. What will you do? Zara asked. Sarah stood up, her expression determined. We need to prepare, not just with technology. They'll expect that. We need to prepare in ways they won't anticipate, ways they can't predict. And your final wish? Not yet, Sarah said, walking back to her computer. First, we need to lay the groundwork, because when I make that last wish, it needs to count for everything. The greater good. The next 3 months passed in a blur of activity. Sarah's papers on theoretical physics were causing a sensation in the scientific community. Her new theories about quantum mechanics and space-time geometry were revolutionary yet somehow provable with existing technology. Universities around the world were replicating her experiments, confirming her findings, and building upon her work. But that was just the public face of her efforts. In her private lab, hidden beneath the observatory, Sarah worked on projects that would have seemed impossible before her wishes. She understood now that humanity's best defense wasn't just advanced technology. It was humanity's inherent unpredictability, their ability to think in ways that defied the logical progression the ancient ones expected. You haven't told them everything, Zara observed one night, appearing beside Sarah as she worked on a device that could detect quantum fluctuations in space-time, the first warning system for when the ancient ones would arrive. I can't, Sarah replied, not looking up from her work. If I revealed everything at once, it would cause panic. Or worse, they wouldn't believe me. We have to do this gradually, guide humanity toward the understanding they'll need. The ancient ones will notice these advances, Zara warned. They monitor developing civilizations closely. Sarah smiled slightly. I'm counting on it, but what they'll see is exactly what they expect. A young species making technological progress. What they won't see is what's really happening. She gestured to her computer screen, where complex equations scrolled past. These aren't just scientific papers I'm publishing. Hidden in the mathematics are the seeds of understanding. Each discovery leads to another, but not in the linear way the ancient ones would expect. I'm creating a web of knowledge that will help humanity think in new ways. You're teaching them to be unpredictable, Zara realized. More than that, Sarah said, finally looking up. I'm teaching them to be creative in ways the ancient ones can't comprehend. Every breakthrough I release sparks 100 new ideas in other scientists. Ideas that don't follow logical progression. Ideas that shouldn't work but do. She stood and walked to a whiteboard covered in complex equations. The ancient ones believe in absolute order. Their technology, their society, everything they do follows strict logical patterns. But humans, we thrive in chaos. We make intuitive leaps. We find solutions that shouldn't be possible. And your final wish? Zara asked. You've been delaying it. Sarah's expression grew serious. Because once I use it, everything changes. The Ancient Ones will know something's wrong. They'll realize humanity is advancing too quickly, too unpredictably. We need to be ready before that happens. A warning light flashed on her console. Sarah rushed to check the readings, her face paling slightly. They're getting closer. The quantum fluctuations are increasing. They've noticed us. You're running out of time, Zara observed. No, Sarah said, her voice firm. We're right on schedule. The warning systems I've helped develop are being installed worldwide. The new theories I've published have sparked a renaissance in human scientific thought. People are starting to think in ways that would have been impossible before. She turned to face Zora, her expression determined. The Ancient Ones expect us to develop in predictable ways. They expect us to build bigger weapons, stronger shields, faster ships. But that's not how we'll win. How will you win? By being human, Sarah replied. By doing what we do best. Adapting, innovating, finding solutions that shouldn't be possible. The Ancient Ones can't predict what we'll do because they can't understand how we think. She walked to her window, looking up at the stars. My final wish. I've known what it needed to be since the beginning. I just needed to make sure everything was in place first. And is it? Sarah nodded slowly. Almost. The quantum detection network goes online tomorrow. The new physics theories have spread worldwide. Laboratories everywhere are making breakthroughs that the Ancient Ones won't expect. We're almost ready. Ready for what? Ready to show the universe that humanity isn't just another predictable species to be controlled or eliminated. Sarah turned back to her work. When I make my final wish, it won't be for weapons or shields or any kind of traditional defense. It will be for something the Ancient Ones would never expect. What will you wish for? Sarah smiled, but there was a hint of sadness in it. You'll see. But first, we have work to do. The quantum fluctuations are increasing faster than I expected. They're coming sooner than we thought. Price of power. The quantum detection network lit up like a Christmas tree at exactly 3:47 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Sarah had been awake, monitoring the readings, but even she was startled by the suddenness of it. The Ancient Ones weren't just coming. They were already here. They're earlier than you expected, Zara observed, materializing beside Sarah's desk. No, Sarah replied, her fingers flying over her keyboard. They're right on time. We just weren't meant to detect them this soon. The network wasn't supposed to be this sensitive. On her screens, red dots appeared across the globe. Quantum distortions indicating where the Ancient One's ships were emerging from higher dimensional space. They were positioning themselves strategically, surrounding Earth in a perfect geometric pattern that would allow them to contain any conventional military response. Your species' governments are detecting them now, Zora said. They're preparing their defenses. Sarah nodded grimly. Defenses that won't work against the Ancient One's technology. But that's not the real fight. Not really. She pulled up another screen, this one showing a different kind of data. Across the globe, in laboratories and universities, researchers were making breakthroughs at an unprecedented rate. The seeds she had planted in her papers, the hidden patterns in her equations, were bearing fruit. Look at this, she said, pointing to the screen. In Mumbai, they've just discovered how to manipulate quantum entanglement in ways that shouldn't be possible. In Sao Paulo, they've developed a new theory of consciousness that completely rewrites our understanding of reality. In Lagos, they're about to test a device that... She trailed off as new alerts flashed across her screen. The Ancient One's ships were beginning to power up their weapons. They're going to attack, Zora observed. No, Sarah said, a slight smile playing across her lips. They're going to try. But first, they're going to attempt communication. They always do. It's part of their logical progression. As if on cue, every electronic device on Earth capable of receiving a signal began broadcasting the same message. It appeared in every language simultaneously, a masterpiece of linguistic precision that demonstrated the Ancient One's vast computational power. Humanity, the message began, Your species has been deemed too unpredictable for incorporation into the galactic order. Your technological progression has become erratic, defying established patterns. For the safety of all civilizations, you will be contained." Sarah stood up, her expression determined. "And there it is. The reason they fear us. Not because we're powerful. We're not compared to them. Not because we're advanced. We're centuries behind their technology. They fear us because we're unpredictable." "It's time, isn't it?" Zara asked. "For your final wish." Sarah nodded slowly. "Yes. But first," she pressed a button on her console, broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen. I know you can hear me, Ancient Ones. Before you act, I want you to consider something." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "You've watched countless civilizations rise and fall. You've guided the galaxy's development according to your logical patterns. But humanity isn't like the others. We don't follow your patterns. We never will." "They will not be swayed by words," Zara warned. "I'm not trying to sway them," Sarah replied. "I'm stalling them. Look." On her screens, more breakthroughs were appearing. The pace of discovery was accelerating. Humanity, faced with an impossible threat, was doing what it did best, innovating in ways that defied logic. "My final wish," Sarah said, turning to Zara. "I wish for humanity to remain forever unpredictable, even to beings who can calculate the movements of galaxies. I wish for our capacity for innovation and creativity to be written into the very fabric of reality, unchangeable even by your power." Zara's form brightened until it was almost painful to look at. "You understand what this means. Such a fundamental change to reality will have consequences beyond what even I can foresee." "I understand," Sarah replied. "But it's not really a change, is it? It's just making permanent what humanity already is. Our greatest strength isn't our technology or our intelligence. It's our ability to defy expectations, to find solutions that shouldn't exist." "Very well," Zara said, raising both hands. "Your final wish is granted." The universe seemed to hold its breath for a moment. Then everything changed. Legacy of stars. The change was subtle at first, barely noticeable to most humans going about their daily lives. But to the Ancient Ones, watching from their ships with senses that could perceive the fundamental forces of reality, it was like watching a stone being thrown into the perfectly ordered pond of the universe. Sarah could see it too, with her wish-granted understanding. Humanity's unpredictability was no longer just a trait. It was now an immutable law of reality, as fundamental as gravity or the speed of light. The Ancient Ones couldn't eliminate it any more than they could change the charge of an electron. "Look," she whispered to Zara, pointing at her screens. The quantum detection network was showing something extraordinary. The Ancient Ones' perfect geometric formation was breaking apart, their ships moving in seemingly random patterns. "They're trying to recalculate," Zara observed. "Every prediction they make about humanity's actions immediately becomes invalid. They cannot establish a stable strategy." Around the world, humanity was responding to the alien threat in ways that defied all logical analysis. Instead of mass panic, there was determination. Instead of surrendering to superior technology, laboratories worldwide were producing innovations that shouldn't have been possible. In Beijing, Sarah read from her screen, "They've just developed a way to communicate through quantum entanglement that even the Ancient Ones can't intercept." In Berlin, they've created a defense system that doesn't just block the aliens' weapons, it redirects their energy in ways that violate their understanding of physics. The Ancient Ones' ships were now moving erratically, their perfect formation completely dissolved. Their weapons powered down, then up again, then down, as if they couldn't decide on a course of action. "They're experiencing something they've never encountered before," Zara said. "Complete uncertainty. They cannot predict the outcome of any action they might take." Sarah nodded. "Because humanity will always find a way to surprise them. Not just now, but forever. It's written into the equations of reality itself." She turned to face the cosmic being. "That's why you gave me the wishes, isn't it? You knew this was coming." Zara's form shimmed with what might have been amusement. "I am a cosmic curator. My role is to guide the universe toward interesting possibilities." A new message came through from the Ancient Ones, but this one was different from the first. Gone was the cold certainty, replaced by something almost like confusion. "Your species defies analysis. Every simulation fails. Every prediction becomes invalid the moment it's made. This is impossible." Sarah stepped up to her microphone again. "No, it's not impossible. It's human. And now it always will be. You can't contain us, can't predict us, can't control us. But you can talk to us as equals." For a long moment, there was silence. Then, one by one, the Ancient Ones' ships began to power down their weapons. The geometric pattern they had tried to maintain was completely gone, replaced by a scattered formation that somehow seemed more natural, more real. "They're retreating," Zara observed as the ships began to move away from Earth. "No," Sarah corrected, watching their screens. "They're regrouping, reconsidering. For the first time in their existence, they've encountered something they can't predict or control. It's forcing them to evolve, to think differently." She turned to Zara with a knowing smile. That was the real purpose, wasn't it? Not just to protect humanity, but to force the Ancient Ones to change, to introduce an element of chaos into their perfect order. "The universe requires balance," Zara replied. "Perfect order leads to stagnation. Perfect chaos leads to destruction. But humanity has always walked the line between the two. Now you always will." Sarah looked back at her screens, watching as the quantum distortions began to fade. The Ancient Ones weren't leaving, not entirely, but they were maintaining their distance, observing, trying to understand this new reality where not everything could be predicted and controlled. "What happens now?" she asked. "That," Zora said, "beginning to fade away, is something even I cannot predict. And that is exactly as it should be." Sarah stood at her window, looking up at the stars. They looked different now, not just because of her enhanced understanding, but because she knew humanity's future among them would be unlike anything the universe had seen before. They would face challenges, certainly. The Ancient Ones wouldn't give up their control of the galaxy easily. But humanity would face those challenges as they always had, with creativity, determination, and solutions that no one, not even beings who could calculate the movements of galaxies, could predict. And somewhere out there, in the vast expanse of space, a small geometric artifact continued its journey, seeking the next civilization ready to defy expectations and rewrite the rules of reality itself.